We're still on module 1. So open that into a new window. We are on week, well, I guess that would be week 6. Week Saturday. We all worked on that travel destinations and then school interface 1. If you want to know what the final code of what school interface 1 should be, you can go ahead and look at school interface 2 to just look ahead if you ever get stuck. But highly encourage you to just do the best you can with school interfaces. And if you do get stuck or something, ask for help. Well, if you really want to, go ahead and look ahead, but that doesn't really do anyone good. But if you really want to use the code for school interface 2, you can see what school interface 1's beginning code or ending code is for school interface 2, but I'll show you that shortly. So the first thing I'm going to do is fork this over to my personal GitHub. Let's bring up my VS Code. There we go. Clear. So I'm going to clone this down, click the little green code, copy it to a clipboard. Let's open that up. Oh, let's zoom in. There we go. Git clone. Paste that there. List everything out. You can see my school interface 1 is right there. So cd into school interface 1. I'm going to open this up into a new VS Code window and then go back to my README so I can actually kind of read what's going on. So for this challenge, we are building a simple interface for a school that will keep track of student records. There are many ways to create the functionality we are looking for, and you should feel free to experiment beyond the scope of this tutorial. We will be using the menu above as a guide. So this is going to be a command line program with some options of what you can do. Based off of what the user inputs, they can list all students, view individual student by their student ID, add a student, remove a student, etc. All right. This tutorial is pretty comprehensive, but it is also meant to challenge you. Some steps are deliberately vague to force you to do your own research and debugging. Don't get discouraged. All right. So let's look at the files. We have the runner file that imports a class school that takes in a school name. And so I'm going to open up the school class. So it looks like I have to build that out. All right. Let's see. And I've got some data. And this data has 2 CSVs, a staff CSV and a student CSV. Looks like student's name, age, role, school ID, and password. Very similar name, age, role, employee ID, and password. I don't know if it should be school ID or student ID, but yeah. Any questions about the initial code? No. All right. So here, in order to keep our record or code organized, we separate our classes and modules into their own files. We can bring code from one file into another by doing from file name, import class name. All right. So create a class, create the classes. So first start creating the school class. So we'll have the def dunder init self, and that was at school name. Self dot school name equals school name. And then it looks like we want a list of staff and student objects. Self dot staff equals an empty array, and self dot students. All right, So with that, I think we can actually run this without it breaking right now. I'm gonna list everything out. I've got my runner file. I can do Python runner. Uh-oh. All right, looks like here it says school.name. So right here, I'm just gonna change this to name just to keep things deviating from the original code. All right, we've got Richmond High. Now we can create our student and staff classes. All right. So I'm going to come over here. I can either do it in the terminal or using VS Code by using this little add button to add 2 new files. But I'm just going to try to get used to doing this in the terminal. Touch staff.py and student.py. There's my staff and student. I'm going to bring these over here. Whoop. That's not what I wanted. All right, so let's start with this student. Class student, def dunder init, self dot. What instance variables should this student class
They
have?
had name, age, role.
Age, role.
And if you didn't make a class above it, then it has the school ID.
All right, and is that it?
And password.
Oh,
password's in there too.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Maybe we'll refactor it at some point in the future, because there might be some similarities between this class and the staff class. Name, age, role, student ID, and password. All right. Now we can do the same thing. Let's just see what. All right, then we got the staff. So you can actually pretty much repeat that whole thing over here. I'm just copying that code over here and doing staff and just making sure name, age, role. Was it employee ID?
It was
something like that. I mean, I can always look at it, and you can check these parameters because they should kind of match up with the header column, or at least some portion of the header column, just so things are congruent between files. All right. That says, oh, that's a lot of code. There's got to be a better way to refactor this. Looks like right now the students and staff only differ when it comes to their IDs are stored and labeled. So again, one of the coding principles, programming principles is keep your code dry, as in don't repeat yourself. And we've got pretty much 4 different attributes that are repeating themselves here. So I can go ahead and create a person class. Where'd that go? Person.py. Did I put it in the wrong file? No. So I can do class person, def dunder init, self, pretty much everything. Might as well just copy this whole thing over because pretty much identical except for the, oh, nope, not password, but student ID. So let's not put in the student ID there. All right. So we can do that. Name, age, role. Is role the same as well? Role. Okay. right. So let's see, let's just go ahead and try to import person, because we're going to use inheritance here. From person, import person, and student inherits from the person class, or student is a subclass of person. So we can get rid of and that. Now, what's the syntax to pass the name, age, role, and password up to the person class?
Super.
All right, super.
Parentheses, open and close. Dot dunder in it.
All right, and then now it's name, age, role, password. Let's just see if this works. I'm just going to create a new student. Tom, name 32, role student. So student ID, some random numbers, XX, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I wanted to see this, I can just run Python student, and it still works. Like nothing showed up. I can always just print it out. Tom.name. Tom. Now it looks like here in student CSV file, like all the roles are student. So it's like, do we really need? Oh no, yeah, we would. Or we can extract. So I guess in the person class, like role isn't necessarily associated with a person. So we can might want to get rid of the role inside of a person and put that self.role equals student, because it's like hard coded, it looks like. In that case, we don't even have to pass in. Oh, that's 5, but 6 were given. Name, age. Oh, student. I'm just making this stuff, like this is like stuff a decision that you could make if you wanted to, because students looks like, I don't know if there's any other type of role a student can have, but in this file doesn't look like there is. Should a student, or should students be able to have different roles than just student? I'm just asking, can anybody think of another role instead of student? What is that?
TA.
Okay, so yeah, if that's the case, it's like, all right, well, we actually do want to have a TA, so we can actually go back and have that there. And instead of hard coding role, we'll just put the role there. So maybe this person is a TA, and I can check the role.
Can you use keyword arguments for the initialization? So in other words, could we put role equals student, because most of the time it is? Does that work for the initialization?
If that's the case, like as a default,
Yeah.
yeah, if that's the case, we'd probably want to move this value to the end, because it might be optional. But yeah, if we did that as well, well, then we'd have to. Again, these are all just architectural, like design decisions. There isn't necessarily a wrong way. I mean, there might be like an explicit wrong way, but all these things, your all suggestion, they're totally valid. And so yeah.
And so that'll work the same way, just like if you had it encoded into a function. If you omit that when you're initializing it, it won't throw an error. It'll automatically assign it.
Yeah, so right here, I didn't assign a TA or a role, and it's defaults to students right there. All right. and if you wanted to, where'd that person class go? So you could do this way. You could also, well, before we get there. All right, so it says let's create a person class and move any shared attributes there. All right, so with that, let's also do that to the staff. So with the staff, employee ID, so we'll do super dot dunder init, and I know I'm going to have to import it, name, age, password. So I'm going to have to import person. So from person, import person. So again, if I wanted to create a person, I'm sorry, not a person, a staff. Do Python staff. All right. Password. Did I not include the password because it needs to include the role? So role, teacher.
You forgot person next to staff.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. So if I were to run that, it's still get an error. So I need to actually inherit all the person attributes. So there we go. Tom is a teacher now. All right, so we've got those working. I'm going to delete that code for right now. All right. So now it says refactor with dict and quargs. I'd say this is optional, but we can go ahead and do that anyway. So if, I don't know why that's like that. That looks like an error. Oh, no, it's not. So with that, what can we do? If a student, so yeah, we kind of went over args and quargs a little bit, but essentially, if we don't want to worry about placement, we can add in quargs. So keyword arguments, and then pass that keyword arguments. And then what is it? Quargs role. See if this is actually going to work. Whoop. And let's go into person. This is where we can take that, pass that through quargs. And it said use the dict as well. This dict, which I don't recommend using because you don't really are unable to see the attributes. So self.dunder dict dunder.update quargs. So if I were to run that, do everything again, let's see if I might get an error because I'm not actually quite sure if this is going to work, this part. Tom. Oh, wait, no, what do I want? I want student info like so. Name, age, is password in here, and role. Pass that in, student info. Student. All right. So this does not work, but if I want to see if I can do that. Nope. So that's not going to work. So here, it's like, would you even need that? If I didn't have that, it still works. Oh, go
I think
ahead.
your student info dictionary, it's you've got student ID and it's listed as school. It started to be ID there, I think, but there's no student ID in there.
Oh, yep. Oh, yeah, right there. You're right. All right, so if I wanted to print Tom dot name or school ID, see if this works. There you go. But there is some redundancy here. Because all the keyword arguments, this entire dictionary is passed into the super init as well. That includes the school ID and role, and it's also updating the person class, which it's updating the person class and it's also updating the student class, which is just redundant. And I'm unable to see which attributes that this person class has, like what instance variables. So I like keeping things where I'm able to see everything like so. So I'm just going to keep it without the quargs, and I'm just going to keep it as is like so. This is easier to read, easier for other developers to see what's going on with this class, what attributes are being passed in. So with that, any questions about like keyword arguments? All right. So it kind of talks about what's actually going on here. That's what is actually kind of being passed in. Name equals Diana. It doesn't matter what order everything's in when it's being passed into that class. All right, now it says move classes into a class folder. So we've got a runner file at the very top level. We should have a classes directory, and our school, person, student, and staff go in there. So if I list everything out, so everything's on the same level, that's not good practice. We want to keep things organized. So I'm going to make a directory called classes. And I can move them. So I can move the person into the classes, move. What the hell is this? Skip changes. And these three as well.
Tom, I just thought of a Quargs question.
Yep.
For the self.dict update you had on the person class, could you do a conditional before that and only update the keys that actually exist?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
But if you're going to do that, it's like you're adding more code, more complexity than it has to, like, then it's then necessary.
Gotcha.
But yes, you can definitely put logic in here and like only update those specific keys. All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so I created a classes. Now this is a little bit more organized. Let's see what's going on. All right. But let's just run the runner. Python runner. And now I'm getting an error message. All right. So from the runner file, I've got my linter on. Import school cannot be resolved. All right. So from the runner, I need to go into classes school to get to the school class. So I can do classes dot school. Now clear that. All right, cool. Now everything's still working. Well, now, I don't know if everything's still working, but all right. the next thing we'll need to do is load our data in from the CSV using Python CSV module. If you haven't done so already, you can read over the docs. We're going to make a design choice here. It says student class will be in charge of talking to our student database. To do so, we'll define a class method. So write a method called all students that returns an array of student objects that represents each row in the student CSV. So here we're going to call student.allStudents and get an array of student objects back. Hint, we need to do the absolute path. So we'll have to deal with that. So with that, where'd my student class go? So I'm going to close this. I'm going to get my student class out there. All right. So first thing I'm going to have to do is import the CSV module. I'm going to also import OS. I'm going to look at these files here. So I'm just going to copy that here. And what this does, let's actually see what this is. I'm going to print my path. Let's see what's going on. Print my path. I'm just going to run. Run that student class. Python, I'll list everything out. So I needed a CD in a classes and then Python student. So that my path gives the absolute path to the classes directory right here. Now, if I print path, what takes the absolute path and joins it to how do I get to the student CSV? If I do that, so from the classes, how do I get to the student CSV? I need to go up one level to data and then into then to grab students. So I'm in the classes. I have to go up one level to here to where it's like the data, student, and runner file. And now I have to go into the data directory and to the students. So that's where the path is. And we'll need to do that because it says we're going to have to create a class method. So called all students, def all students. And that's going to be a class method. Pass. Again, that's class method. At class method decorator. So class method means I'm able to run this all students method on the class and not an instance of the class. All right. So can someone tell me the syntax to read from a CSV file? Forgot what it was.
Yeah, with open.
With open, what goes here?
Path.
The path, because okay, again, this path is where that CSV file that we're reading from is, and this is the absolute path right here. So as a student file, because this is going to be a student file. And do we want to use the under lowercase reader object or a dict reader object? What do y'all think we should use?
CSV reader.
Dict reader. All right.
Dict
So
reader.
student reader equals csv.dict reader. We pass in that student file. Great. So I'm going to just for row and student reader, I'm going to print each row. And so in here, I'm going to run student dot all students, because again, this is a class method. So I can call the all students method on that student class. So I'm gonna clear, I'm gonna Python, run that Python student.py. I guess I can get rid of these print statements. There. And there you can see I've got a dictionary of everyone's values, key values. But what I want to return is an array of student objects. So I'm just gonna call it a student array. I'm gonna create an empty array. And for each row, I'm going to append a new student instance. And I'm gonna pass in, this is where you could have used the keyword arguments because it'd just be like row. But I'm gonna grab the row dot name. Let's see, what order does it go in? Age, row, age, row, student ID, row, password. Is that it? Instead of row, I should probably call these student. So for student in student reader, I'm going to append, I'm going to create a new student instance by passing in the student name, age, student ID, and password. At the very end, I'm going to return the student array. So if I print that, I should get an array of student objects. Uh-oh. So is it student ID? What happened? Is it because it's school ID? Let's see. There we go. So in my student instance or my student class, I'm calling the student ID, but up here in the CSV file, it's called school ID, which is, I think, is stupid, but that's what we're given. So here we have an array of student objects. Now here in our runner, wait, where's our school at? We can run student dot all students and execute that. But wait, I need to from student import student. If I clear that, and if I do, if I created a new school instance, so like school equals school, Glenbard East, and then do print school dot all, or is it school dot students, and run that school file, I get all those students. So if I've got the student class working, I can go ahead and get the staff class working. Where the hell did the staff class go? Right there. Again, I'll have to import CSV, import OS, import path and my path. Instead of the students.csv file, let me close this. It goes to the staff. Then everything is essentially the same. I'm just going to copy this entire thing over. Instead of all student, I'm going to do all staff. Wherever there is a student. I'm going to call it the staff. And then it's a school ID is an employee ID in the staff CSV. Like so. We can make sure this works by doing print staff, all staff. And now do Python staff.py. Uh-oh. Password. Where's the password at? Name, age. Oh, did I not pass in the role? So right there should be role. So it worked on my student because it's not required. But staff. Role. There we go. We have staff objects. All right. So now if I go to school, instead of from students, I can do from staff, import staff, and then do staff dot all staff. All right. So now let's go to our runner and run our runner. Instead of school.name, also grab the school.staff and school.students. So Python runner, I'm gonna list everything out. So I'm still in the classes directory. So I need to go up one level, cd up one level, list everything out. I can do run Python runner. And now we get an error. So let's read what this says. All right, file in the runner on line 1 from classes school, import school. All right, and then it says in the school from student, import student, no module name student. So in here on line 1 in my school class, it doesn't know what student is. So when importing, I think I've mentioned this in the past, but if you forgot it already, it's totally okay because importing modules in Python isn't that intuitive. You need to import everywhere in relation from where you're running the file. So if I'm running the file at the very top level, in order to get to student, I need to go into classes.student to get to the student class. So if I run this again, all right, now it goes into runner, school. Now in the student class, it doesn't know what person is. So up here, again, this is from the runner file, which is the file running. How do I get to the person class? I need to go to classes.person. Now if I run that again, great. In the school class again, I have the same issue with staff. I need to go to classes, classes.staff.
So in that syntax, the dot is acting just the same way the / would if you were, okay.
Correct. And just like I had in the student class, it didn't know where the person was. Now I'm having the same issue in the staff class. So again, in relation to where I'm running the file, which is the runner file, how do I get to the person class? Well, I'm at the top level. I need to go into classes.person. So I need to go to classes.person. If I run that again, great. Everything worked out. So I've got an array of staff objects, an array of student objects. So if I come back here, loading staff, loading students, and there we go. See if I have everything. So I can clear the terminal, I can get add, get status. Can run a get ignore if I wanted to, so I don't have to add all that crap. Or I can just do get reset, get add classes, get status. Oh crap, it's also still adding all that. Get reset. I can touch dot get ignore. And then just do high cache. I think that should work. Yep. So I typed in PyCache in the get ignore file, and then in the Explorer over here, PyCache is grayed out. That means it's no longer going to be added to Git. So now I can do clear, git, add everything, get status. So I'm adding the get ignore and just the classes, only the files that I absolutely need to run. So git commit instructor solution, git push origin master, clear the terminal, come back over to my personal GitHub and see if I do a hard refresh, it will say updated 13 seconds ago. I can go into pull requests, new pull request, and create a pull request. All right.